Everybody, we'll actually let you keep talking for a little bit because we both have a delay with the pizza and the parking. And we realize people get started out a little late. We didn't realize that we were losing parking to nighttime use next door here, so that's been a challenge. So we are going to start a few minutes late. So if anybody online is going to be
need a green thing.
Oh, he was here.
Yes, what he does.
All right.
Fine, I can start serving you. We've got pepperoni and cheese. You know your preference. Can you get up here?
Yeah. The old guy doesn't remember. Maybe so. This house. I owe your own. I worried about it's really bad. Oh, that's right. I remember about it. Yeah, but I know.
I don't know how I and then the next 50 years. Oh, that's true. No, you're good. I don't take 10%.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thanks for your patience with our delayed start. Looks like everybody's got pizza. Are there any that are still waiting or waiting for the line to die down? So feel free to help yourselves. There's food in the back. We can have some emergency exits here in the room just in case something happens. And we have probably a handful of people online. So if you're online and you are unable to see the video or have any questions, then you can reach out to me as well as anybody else in this room during regular business hours. My number is 682-4902, 682-4902, and it's MKOSMOS@eugene-or.gov. And that's on most of the flyers and the website. So thank you. You'll notice at the tables, there are some sign-in sheets. If you haven't, at some point tonight, please do sign in. There are some other sheets which will be for a breakout session later. But for the most part, we are going to go through, the agenda would be good. Oops. Or not. Oh, there we go. Welcome. We have some general rules for all of our workshops. We ask that people be respectful, allow others to talk, and just be succinct. So we have about an hour and a half together, a little bit less with our delay. So we want to allow a lot of people to talk, which is why we'll do breakout sessions. Our format for tonight is a little bit of introduction, followed by a discussion of the park, the site itself, the influences on the park, as well as some design concepts that we put together for the park. So this is our informative portion of the session. We'd like to get through that so that everybody has the same background information and then can ask and provide some more informative questions. The second half, a larger portion of that, is for our Q&A. We'll do a general group Q&A, and then we'll also break out into the groups that you're sitting in at the tables, and we'll get some more instructions on that a little bit later. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We got it so-so in the back.
What's that?
We got it so-so in the back.
A so-so in the back. All right, I will try and go a little louder. How did we get here? Well, we are here because of the 2018 Parks and Recreation System Plan that was adopted and later approved, and then the 2018 bond and levy, which voters approved and voted for, thank you, as well as our most recent 2023 levy that was recently approved. The bond, as you know, pays for construction of projects. The levy pays for maintenance. So in this case, the renewal of the levy, it's on a different cycle, is so that we can continue maintaining our parks at their current level. So thank you, voters, for voting in the 2023 levy. And I'll also mention that we have in the system plan identified many years ago that we'll have a $1 million budget for renovating the park at University Park. In addition to that, we also have a little bit over $30,000 that the South University Neighborhood Association has raised through parking revenues. And so all that goes towards the park design and construction. We have a process that goes anywhere from 2 to 3 years for park design. It started with the first survey when that came out, a little bit of upfront work before that. It then goes into design, design of concepts. We vet those concepts with you, eventually reach a hybrid. And then we take those drawings and we work with our engineers to develop construction drawings or bid sets, which then go to the contractor. And our hope is to have the construction happen in 2025. So with that, we are going to be spending a lot of time in this first orange circle here together. So let's expand on that a little bit. Let me see if I can minimize this for everybody. Oh, much better. Okay. So many of you have already seen and received survey number 1. That survey has closed. That first survey is kind of casting a wide net to say, what is it we really want to focus on at this park? Is there something we should be thinking about that we don't think about at all of our park design? That's where we develop our goals. We talk about amenities that the park can have, and that stuff starts to inform our design process. So from there, once that survey closed, we did a little analysis of that. We'll go through that with you today. for those who haven't read it online. And that helps us determine what the priorities are that we need to be tackling in the park design. The second step, which is this workshop and survey 2. Survey 2 is live right now. It includes these 2 design concepts and a number of questions to get at some of our needs and priorities and vision for the park. The third part of our community engagement process ends with the third survey. At that point, we are at a hybrid design. So we have some ideas and 2 plans right now. We will eventually hybridize those. We may learn something tonight. We may learn something in our surveys that allows us to make another change in there. So all of that will come together in number 3. Sometimes we're asking the same questions or similar questions, and we're really trying to get to the list of priorities that the community wants for their park. About 2/3 of the survey takers are visit the park on a daily to a weekly basis or within a couple times a month. So, and then the remaining third visit it less. So we're getting to hear from people who actually use the park and live near the park. Sorry, I think it's going to sleep, Kirkland. There we go. So there's another little something that happens in the background. We do collect all of your community input, and that's one of the items that goes into our funnel here. That input, along with the project budget, what it's going to take us to construct this specific park and where it is, as well as any maintenance issues that there might be with the park. So maintenance is not just ongoing maintenance of existing features, it's also what is safe, what is going to last a long time, are there ADA routes and accessible routes for everybody to get to portions of the park and go through any permitting. So if all those things align, then we can funnel all that together and we can get to a buildable project. So here's what we've heard. This is from the first survey. And what we heard in the first survey was that really the basic amenities hit the top of that list. The basic amenities we listed as benches, seating, picnic tables, shade was a separate one. The second was playground. So 185 out of 400 people, 404 said that was one of the most important issues in this park. So we need to focus on those. Next on the list was the restroom, followed by trees and shade. So we also asked, how do you use the park? What do you use the most? And most people said they use the paths the most. It makes sense. You get to all the parts of the park. Followed by that was the lawn and grass field for gathering. We had a separate question for lawn and grass field for sports. So it's really just for groups, small groups to get together, gather. They enjoy the open space, they enjoy the shady space, enjoy the lawn space. Good information. Next is open areas. That kind of goes with the last one. So not too surprising. Followed by the playground and then some others below that. And then we asked, what is it important for you to do in the park or to be able to do in the park? And number one for that was to gather with neighbors and friends. So we're hearing a lot of things that are very similar, and this starts to tie some things together for us and help us target a certain kind of design. People also come to unwind and relax and enjoy nature. If we were to upgrade some things in the park, what should we be thinking about? The first two were trees and plantings, shade, followed by playground equipment, followed by benches and seating. And what's interesting is in the written comments, because we like to leave some open ones there, we learned a little more why those were there, why the benches and seating came up as a topic. And on those write-in responses, people actually explained and said, you know, when the shelter is rented, we just lost all that seating and there's nowhere for us to go. So we showed up with our family and we lost a place to sit down as a group. So that seating is important from that standpoint, and that kind of helps us understand it. So within those writing responses, there were kind of a couple of other themes. So beyond the basic pool of questions that we asked, the playground was an important theme that came up. Addressing the wading pools to some extent came up, and that was anything from do something with it, fill it in or turn it back on. Basic amenities, again, benches and picnic tables, and trees and shade. So The first survey, we had 404 responses, and as of today, we have 60 responses. I think we can do a little better than that. And for those who are waiting for this meeting, that's okay. It's still going to be open for a couple of weeks. But as of today, that's the feedback that we have for the current 2 park designs and questions. So if you haven't already, do take the survey and please share it with other people. Okay.
Do you have the demographics
We're getting
of the
closer.
survey?
We do have the demographics of the survey and the full survey summary, executive summary and details and demographics are posted on the website right now. Right. So there's a lot more detail in there if you're interested in that. And now with these first 2 slides, we actually have some photographs on the cardboards that are printed outside. So we're going to glance over these pretty quickly. But if you want more detail, more information, we have that. So this is our park, plan view of our park, and kind of highlighted all the existing trees. These are the major shade trees within the park. We are aware that the flowering cherries, they are the most iconic thing for this park. In fact, this picture, the photo that we picked for the website, have really seen better days. They took hard hits during some of our storms, lost a lot of branches. We had our urban forester come out and assess all the trees in the park, as well as do root probing around the big ones so that we know where it's safe to start doing things and where it may not be. And those trees were a big concern. So they're about 20 years old. They live to about 30 years. And right now they're in sort of that, they're nearing that 50% stage of, when you lose half of your limbs, that's when you start thinking about taking the tree off. And so our plan right now is to remove those and plant them with something that's going to be here again for the next 30 years. But that's a tough decision, and it's of course up for discussion, but we took that as an assumption because we're doing some things that work in and around that area, and without those trees there, we couldn't do that. So with that, our site, how do I get this guy to go away? Well, to the north of the screen, I'm sorry, I can't hide this here. 23rd Street has 2-hour parking on it. University Street has completely unrestricted parking. And then there's no parking on 24th. Why is this important? For a neighborhood park, not so much, because neighborhood parks are meant to serve people that can walk to the park. However, we are considering and looking at all of our parks and saying, if we want to provide equitable access to them, providing at least one ADA parking space at even neighborhood parks is something that we've been doing on all of our past projects. And so that's something we're considering for here too. Some other details about the park. In general, these are what were called field grown trees that were grown here in this park. Very well, deeply rooted, good health. So barring any other kind of crazy storms, we're really looking forward to having them here for another long time. Oops. Okay, here's another view of the park. The north half of the park has some pretty steep slopes, and that's going to inform some things. I'll tell you a couple of those. One, I mentioned that ADA access and ADA parking. Those 2 routes, those 2 entries are not accessible. They're too steep to be accessible. They'd have to be made about twice as long for that to work. But we do have an accessible entry at the south. The other thing that those steep slopes do is they create some good drainage towards the middle of the park until it gets flat. And then we are very aware that there are some wet spots in the park. And so we're planning to address those with some leveling, potentially some additional drainage, under drainage, and learn that some of those pipes really haven't been, or maybe clogged at this point in time. So that's something we do at the start of the project is fix those types of things. We have some great views to Spencer Butte. And that's the other nice thing that steep section of the park has. In fact, everything from the little library down, as well as the seating area up there behind the decommissioned waiting pool, great views to Spencer's Butte. So we like to think about that and make sure that we're not blocking that anyway.
I'll do it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Other projects. So our streets and transportation department is doing upgrades along 24th and several other streets as part of the package deal. And part of that is looking at some of our crosswalks on 24th. So I'm saying that to let everybody know that this is gonna happen. It'll probably get constructed before the park does, but we're already coordinating. With parks and, or with, I'm sorry, with streets. And so we know what the plans are. Currently, this entry to the middle of the park is aligned with the alley in the middle, so it's crossing to nowhere. Those will be aligned with the actual crosswalks. The level and detail of what's happening as far as creating a safe crossing at those streets is still being worked out by the transportation folks. And when we learn what those are, we can share them with you. But with those future alignments in mind, we know what we need to do in the park. Okay, so now the fun part, in no particular order, and this is our green concept. Our green concept is probably most similar to what we have right now. By that, I mean the routes are essentially the same and all the features are in the same locations. And we'll get into why in a minute. So if we were to start in and around the restroom building down here on the bottom, we're going to kind of walk the site clockwise and come back. Both concepts, both the blue and the green concept, are adding a sidewalk connection here to tie into the other ones transportation is going to be doing for us on 24th. And we've heard that that connection is desirable. This is just the time to do it. As we start moving clockwise, so that's both concepts, by the way. As we move clockwise in this concept, the basketball court is replaced in its same location. There's actually a little bit less paving going in because there was an excess on the tree side. It's much wider than a standard court. So we'll give those trees a little bit more breathing space with this and with both concepts. But the court is beyond just needing surfacing. It's a complete redo at this point in time. So that whole court has to come out and get redone so that it'll last another 30 or 40 years. As we move up, you'll see that the playground shifted a little bit to the west. And that's just because those three existing trees provide some good afternoon shade in the middle of the day towards the evening. And in the summer, that could be a good thing for a playground. Right now, the basketball court gets most of the shade. To the north of the playground, and the playground is expanded a little bit and all new equipment. We don't get into that detail at this stage. We're trying to kind of fit where everything lands. We have a little expanded plaza space, and you'll notice in this concept that the path that used to come down to the middle to the center of the park has been removed, and it's shifted over now to be against the playground. That's doing a couple things. One is that entry from the northwest corner. Now you can make a direct connection down to the road. You don't have to go all the way to the middle and then double back to go to the playground or the rest of the basketball court. A lot of people take that shortcut right to the grass. This is just going to flow like that. And the grades allow us to do that. But then removing that one in the middle, we heard again, people who like to just lounge in the lawn and just enjoy the lawn. That creates a bigger lawn panel in the middle there that's not part of the field area without that path. So that kind of adds something that general open lawn space that everybody's asking for. In this concept, we have removed the performance space. And so we're going to hear a little bit about that, I think, tonight in the surveys, and replace that with nature play, which is an extension, a different kind of play in and around, and it's near the playground. Between the two, we have a little plaza space with some tables and chairs, umbrella tables is what we're considering right now. We're still vetting some of these ideas. When they're new like this, we have to test the waters a little bit. So we're not only testing with you, we're testing them with our agents folks. So we need to make sure that it's something that will last and can stand up to the Eugene pattern. But the nature play takes place of what was formerly the performance space. The grades would be pulled back. We could do an embankment slide, a boulder scramble, and some natural elements in there. And then the shelter in this green concept would either be in this exact same location that it is, or if it helps us to turn it sideways so that more of the tables have a view to Spencer's view, you can consider doing something like that. But then the area with the old waiting pool would be filled in, and we can do extra seating there. So it's still the same size shelter, and when it does get rented out, then those seats are not available, and that family gathering space is not available. So our thinking is that a set of umbrella tables up there and down by the playground offers that additional seating and gathering space that people are asking for. existing benches stay, the murals do stay, and the bike parking stays. We did add a little bit of bike parking here in the middle of the park. And then I mentioned the ADA access and parking. So right now, this is our best spot for an ADA parking space. It's right where it stops getting too steep down that street. Remember the steep slide? From there down, it's less than 2%. It's really good. But then we start getting into the fenced area around the ball fields. And of course, 24th has no parking. So from that spot, we would provide an ADA accessible route that gets us all the way to all the different parts of the restaurant. And then some people have asked what the arrows are. That also then becomes the maintenance route, because we need to service all the high use areas, and the high use areas are the shelter and the playground and the restroom. If it has a trash can or a restroom associated with it, those are places we need to drive and spend some time. So next slide, please.
Did you mention Petanque?
Oh, and did I mention Petanque? Sorry. Our field and the infield, which doubles as our Petanque field, is in the bottom right. So we're not planning on any improvements in there other than the general drainage that we're looking for. Thank you.
So the bleachers would not change, or the bleachers would come out.
Oh, no, the bleachers for the field would stay. So this is the ball field is not high on our recreation partners list of the best greatest fields. It's a very small field, but it does get a lot of use, and it does take the overflow. And neighbors and teams use this area to practice, whether it's for soccer or softball, what have you. So it does see use. We did ask that question pretty early on. Hey, what if the field went away? We got some pretty quick feedback. So, yeah.
Aren't they using?
They do.
For the little
So we talked, yes, for the little kids. So both kids sport and our recreation program uses that. So this slide just takes a look at some of the tree cover. The green trees are all the existing ones, and then the yellow ones are the proposed new ones. So we're proposing a little bit more shade at the playground, that expanded lawn space in the middle, get some new trees for shade. Those could be ornamental trees again to replace those beautiful cherries. And then some shade trees up near the nature play.
So the pin oaks stay.
Oh, yes.
They're
All the big
field
things.
grown.
Yeah, they're great trees. And then this furnishing plan just helps us to just break it out and identify where things are. So this lets you see where the bike parking is in the middle, and on the north where it is currently. We have these two locations for umbrella tables. We're showing a couple of movable picnic tables, and movable or a certain style, because they do move around. We have to mow around, so they don't necessarily live there forever. Seating at the playground, seating at the basketball spot, and seating up at the overlook as well. Lighting, we're not going to talk a whole lot about. The lights in the park are really old. They're the same age of another park that failed very recently. And when it fails, it just goes completely downhill. This is a direct burial system. When that happens, they're not replaceable or fixable in the locations they are. So this is our opportunity to upgrade those lights. Locations will move around.
Okay.
Next slide. Blue concept. So the blue concept is really turning some things around in different ways. We'll start again at the restroom. Again, there is a connection to the crossing improvements that are going to happen here. A wider connection where the crossing improvements happen here. Next to the restroom building, we have some bike parking that's close to the playground. In this option, we added an adult fitness station. There's some interest in that. We're already getting feedback on that now in these concepts. In this one, we said, okay, we heard that shade is very important, especially for the playground. So we said, okay, well, let's move the playground to the shade. That basketball court currently gets the most shade of any other area in the site. So the playground takes the place of the basketball area so that it could take advantage of the great shade from those big trees. That's the big change in this concept. To the north of the playground, we have a little seating area with some game tables in this concept. There's a picture of what those look like. We do use those in other parks. So that one, that That's one that's pre-approved that we can pretty much use anywhere. In this concept, we moved the shelter and its picnic tables closer to the restroom and playground. So if you think about using it for big group events and you like to use the restroom or need to use the restroom or the playground, all those use areas are concentrated here. The only thing that's moved off to the side now is the basketball court. So that takes the place of where the shelter, the existing shelter is. This new shelter would be bigger, a larger group shelter, so we'd see a lot more people. The court itself would be smaller. We've heard these described as urban courts, and what happens is they play faster because the hoops are closer together, and it appeals to a wider range of ages as opposed to just the youngsters who are totally happy to run across the full court back and forth. For the rest of us who might want to join them, a smaller court might be an okay thing. So we're testing the waters with some of these things, and when we ask questions, we want to know if that's a good idea, because maybe that idea mixed with the green concept is a good thing. So that's part of why we do this. In this one, we left the performance space, but we took out the stage area for it. So what we heard in some of the written comments was that people do use that seating because there's not enough around the park. Now, if we're going to add seating, maybe we don't need that. But in this concept, we're just going to do some minor repairs to the seating in the performance space, take away the stage portion, put back more lawn, some shade trees so that you can use that seating area. In this case, because all the maintainable features are down here in the middle, we're making a more direct connection to that parking spot, to that handicap parking spot, and that also becomes our maintenance route to go in and out of the park. If you're wondering, the figures with the dashed lines, those are our existing sidewalks that remain, so we're not spending money to replace those. They're in good shape. Where it's a solid line around those, and on the prints it shows up a little bit more of a brown color. That's all we do. And next slide, please. For shade, we're planting some trees for shade of the court in its new location, as well as for the performance space. Playground, of course, gets the shade immediately from the existing trees. And next slide. And for the furnishings, this then is a layout of, we've got a couple of benches for overlooking the playground. We think the fitness station near the playground is a good pairing. We've added bike parking next to the restroom. That's visible from the shelter. It's visible from all those use areas down here. The existing bike parking is still remaining, so those 3 spots are still up there. Game tables, a lighting plan. The lighting again will adjust a little bit once we come to a final. And I think that's about it. So now we should be at our question slide. So we're going to take a few minutes and a few general questions to get us kicked off and started. And then we're going to stop that. And we're going to let you continue those discussions at your tables. And when we do that, we want everybody to be able to speak. So if you are at a table with only a handful of people and you'd like to film something else, we're welcome to do that. We're going to have a couple of people sitting and trying to help moderate. I'm going to be floating, going from table to table. Some tables might be self-moderated. When that happens, we have some primer questions to get everybody started. We're going to ask that people, you can fill these out. I'd like for you to fill these out. Yes, Alyssa. Oh, after. Fill these out, and when we gather back as a group again, we'll stop the section. We're going to have 20 minutes to that breakout. We'd like to hear back the highlights, the high points of what's going to happen. Questions?
I remember in the first survey, there was a question about, would you like food trucks? And I certainly would. And I'm wondering if there were any ideas about if that were to be incorporated, where would that be? Did that even make it to any of the design stage? Because I thought that was a great idea.
Didn't the food trucks? You're catching me at a loss, actually. I don't remember the food truck.
Oh boy,
question.
I remember the food trucks.
Now we're talking about our city survey, not a university.
City survey. Yeah.
South University.
Yeah, it was one of the drop down.
Oh, one of the drop down
Things that you might be interested in.
General things that you're interested in parks in general. I think that might have been the context, but I'll leave the justice of looking that up and figuring out an answer. I don't think I can do it on the spot. I'm sorry. Okay, yes.
And the option of a waiting pool will be added to the survey number 2, since that hasn't been added, but people have to write it in, and the reports about 10 to 15% of people wrote that in, which is really high percentage of people writing in about that. So it seems like it deserves being called out in the survey, at least to get that public opinion. Whether or not it goes forward is another question, but for full public input, even interest in that, it seems would be nice to have that, I feel, included in the survey.
So the question was about the waiting pool and or some kind of a spray feature. And so I'll just say that as part of our decision-making process and what questions to even ask, we look at a lot of things. We look at what the project budget is, both for construction and for maintenance. Waiting pools, now spray play, are very high maintenance items, and you do not have maintenance dollars to fund their continual maintenance. So if we were to put a question in about spray play and everybody said, yes, we'd like to have spray play, we can't do it because you don't have that maintenance funding for the spray play. There are other factors. The other factors are, if you remember the system plan, the 2018 system plan, that really looked at all of Eugene and prioritized and said, hey, we have 4 spray play features down here in the southern quadrant of Eugene, and this whole other area that's completely underserved. We're going to treat the underserved area first. And then we also have within 1.5 miles of University Park, 2 spray play features, one at Fairmount and one at Washington Park. So for those reasons, we did not put the question into survey 2. Because we didn't think it would be fair to lead everybody into an avenue of something that we really can't explore. And I might have missed something, so Caroline.
Well, that's great, Mark. Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Burke. I'm the Parks and Natural Resource Planning Manager for the city. Mark totally did a great job answering that question, but I'll just provide a little bit more. You know, we try to manage expectations, and by like putting it as an option on the survey, I feel like maybe we're creating an expectation that could happen, whereas we really are, and we know it's a very desirable element. Just for a little background, waiting pools we can't do anymore. They don't meet health department code, so they're not an option. Spray play is, you've probably seen it at Washington Park or Fairmount Park. There's a lot of maintenance and upkeep that goes into those systems. And so we need to, and our maintenance dollars, we just have to be very judicious with them. And so we're really kind of trying to prioritize spray play in the areas Mark talked about. That's Bethel, Southwest Eugene, River Road, Santa Clara. There's no spray play anywhere in that entire western side of the town. So that's really kind of where we're trying to put our maintenance dollars. But I certainly appreciate the desire.
And I did not introduce all of our staff who came to support and help us in our breakout sessions and with all the logistics. Carolyn Burke, our manager, Emily Crawford, who is monitoring our Q&A on the people who are dialing in online, Pamela Bowers, Ryan Turner, Philip Richardson, where are you, Philip? Back here, and Alyssa Gavette. So some of the folks will come and sit with you and help you with the next section, but let's take 1 or 2 more questions. I think we're doing okay on time. Yes, please.
For your nature play on the green concept, is there an existing park that you might have modeled that has been in operation for a while that you would maybe mimic for a university park, or is this sort of in the newer territory?
This is a little bit in the newer territory. We did put some very modest, very modest nature play features in Berkeley Park. And maybe Pamela, can you fill in the rest of that question and speak loudly enough for the folks in the back too?
Yes, and we may also consider a sand play within that area. Nature play, we try to use natural elements like a lot of times we'll have fallen trees in our park and we want to repurpose them, and we'll put them in the nature play setting. We'll put some fun rocks to climb on. It's not going to probably be fancy, just simple things that kids like to play in, with running logs and With that hill, we could maybe kind of like quick slide one on the hill and say.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, young lady in the middle.
Are you going to, take away the merry-go-round in the park?
Just make sure I have a table between me and you right now, because I'm about to deliver a difficult answer to you. Our existing play equipment that's in there, is so old that we can't keep it safe for everybody, and so it does have to go. I'm sorry. There are some other spinning features, that are similar to that are in production, that will be around for a long time, and so. Yes, to answer your question, we can include some spinning merry-go-round features.
All right. Are we ready to have some group discussions around the table? What do you think? I think we are. We had some good, unless there's one more question. Oh, and Alyssa had something for us as well.
If anyone needs more pizza, come see me, we've got plenty here. So use the opportunity to stretch your legs.
Thank you.
So just a couple thoughts for discussion. Please take turns when you go around the table. I find that like starting with one person and going around clockwise is a great way to make sure everybody gets heard. And please fill out your sheets. Those are our notes from the meeting.
Yeah, these sheets and your thoughts are the record of the meeting, so we may not be able to take all the notes for you, but you're helping us to. Thank you. Of course.
Anyway, but not those questions.
And I like. I really want to ask about the demographic. I was getting asked what and they're 30 years old. They're not. Like I said, you're not my. Yeah, I think this out. Yeah. Last night. Then everyone. Never.
Slides, you may have.
The other one's over there. Yeah.
Welcome. If you'd like to put any questions in the question and answer, you may.
Well, and from my point, those are. They're there. I was at the. On the lawn, where right next to it, there's a receptacle in front.
So, in like a neighborhood park,
Yeah, it would be, it would be the part.
Something like.
But that's why.
Well,
That's all. Don't do it
anyway.
Arguing about. And you know, lot of speed, right? That's how they, it's not something that help you. There is a very high. That's right. I think they a lot. No, I think it's fun. You make fun. Just by leaving. So they all. But they would bring their let me know. Yeah. Like us. Your dad is not bad. Because we don't have representation. Smaller movements on the location. That group that uses that. When you do the survey.
Hi, Ed. I don't know if you can hear me, but if you had any thoughts or questions you want to ask, I'm here. This is something or questions about other things that we're looking forward to in the tech park. Do you think we missed anything with the design? How would you like to see yourself in your family in the park once these ideas are solidified? So let me know if you have thoughts. You can unmute yourself or actually put questions or just write your comments in the Q&A.
They're here. They're here.
Yeah.
About this. They don't have yards. They don't have yards. But I want to make sure that you understand.
We had another one, but I can't.
So my kids, they keep on getting. It was really. I get on the other side of it, my kids. Every day after school, they don't have practice. They don't hear me play soccer. And I think you're trying to you things. And this one, lucky higher. Working right now. Playground. Wander. They have to help enough time to get away. Away from 20%. We're getting rid of it. If they want to cut it here. They're gonna cut it right here. We're not gonna be off of it, right? You can cut it. But that's still.
I think the whole big time back and forth. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. What we'd like to do is pick up a highlight from each group, something that you learned, something that you said, wow, we never thought about this. Here's a great idea. And I'll start with the group that's really anxious and ready to share something, and then I'll just take it at each table. How does that sound? So who would like to share first? First hand popping up, please.
The one for us was the maintenance route, intersecting right through the ball fields out in the grass. And so by having a maintenance route that goes through, you basically eliminate the ability to, one, play baseball, softball, but also that field, that open field to be able to play ultimate frisbee, soccer, anything like that. So wanting to encourage a different thought process to a maintenance route, keeping the current one off of 24th, find another place for ADA access, etc., that doesn't interfere with the open field play of that space.
Thank you. Very well articulated. Appreciate that. Let's hear from this group on here. Vanessa, your group. Would you like to report?
I think keeping on that topic of maintenance routes, I learned something new where a lot of people will have athletic activities in small groups. And one of the green concept has walk one way over, and that really shrinks down one potential concept or active area. So we shifted a little bit, it would still provide for.
You might on the blue concept, maybe popping that ADA route up to give more room to the students here.
It actually makes for a great outfield.
Yeah, so that makes sense to us. And then it gives more room here for another little game to be happening.
Thank you.
And then on the, I mean, we really want an adult fitness station with mini bars.
On the green.
But the big thing with tables, we like all the different tables. I have 2 1-year-olds and a 5-year-old, and the draw tables and the game tables feel a little exposed. And I feel like they're gonna fall off, and having that nice long bench where I can pop them all down next to me is really helpful. And I assume other people with small children feel that way. Other people at our table liked the game table where you could sit with adults and play a game. So we were wanting a mix of different kinds of tables.
Thank you. We have some time. We'll come back to you. It sounds like there's one. Middle table. Area. Anybody?
Well, I'm primarily concerned about the location of the basketball court. Everybody, we're being being directly across the street from most of the neighbors. It's the noisiest part of the park on a regular basis, apart from the children's play, which is wonderful. Nice to get kids playing. Not so nice to do basketball after dark. And even though the park closes at dark, the play continues. Midnight basketball. Perhaps I'm selfish. I really don't want it in my front yard.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And you also mentioned that the existing basketball court is still very audible all over the neighborhood. Right. Yeah. Thank you. You have somebody from your table?
Yeah, speaking with the basketball team, I was lucky enough to have 2 musicians at my table, both of whom have performed at the performance space, and I had never thought about the basketball musical instrument conflict. And generally, people like the blue concept for a bunch of reasons that I'll mention later, but that was the one conflict with the blues at the basketball court, and the cellos are right next to each other, and basketball hitting cellos is just an image of it. People like a lot of things about the blue, it's more compact, the ADA access is better. There was a lot of interest in water. We have someone at our table who helped raise funds to resurrect the wading pool 30-40 years ago, funded the staff person there, so I was asked to underrun water. And adult exercise equipment, not just like playground equipment. One thing. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, we'll come around for a second.
Yeah.
One thing from this table. Or 2, since we're on that roll.
I noticed, we also live across from the park, so I second that the basketball location in the blue is a big concern for the neighbors that are right there, a really big concern. But what we talked a lot about in our table is the shelters. So we observed that the existing shelter being used by a lot of groups and a lot of like unloading from cars down there. So having it close to the road, I think has some advantage. But we also observed that, often what would happen is they pile all their food on those tables because they're not huge, and then people are just standing around. So I think that those extra tables would always be used by those groups. So if we're looking to expand more seating for people who aren't in the group, I think it needs to be away from there. But building on that again, we thought that there's a lot of reason to have a shelter close to the playground. Because if you do have a lot of kids in your group, that proximity is really nice. So we were wondering, in the game plan, if it would work to have a second shelter in between the playground and the basketball court, a second table area, or where these umbrellas are, have a shelter be there. I mean, I do observe that it often rains here, and so I see people on Father's Day. There was a whole big group huddled into the shelter, and I'm sure they were glad they had the shelter all morning. So I think that having the possibility for a shelter, I think. A second shelter, I think would allow more groups to use the park more comfortably, more year round.
Thank you. Who haven't we heard from yet? Emily, please.
Other people at my table left because they had young children. So,
it's probably rather obvious that, there was a lot of conversation about a big playground with really cool stuff, and maybe some sort of signature item that, you know, really made it a fun draw for the neighborhood. And also, echoed the idea for a second small shelter, maybe near the, playground that was not reservable. Because they thought that would be more sort of a year-round feature as opposed to some materials and like sort of chairs and tables that have been shown in some plans. So I thought this was well, the playground was rather obvious, but the other one I thought.
Thank you. Sure. Back table?
We were curious, if the smaller size urban basketball court was something that was very popular. If that could be built in the green concept location, it might be able to, that area between the restroom and the corner of the park is very underutilized. Very little ever happens there. If that basketball court of the smaller footprint could slide down a little bit further past the restroom, bring the playground down and put a second shelter between the playground and let's the nature play, that would be able to be reserved, sort of a combination of some of the other concepts. So that there would always be some place for parents to stay sheltered near the playground.
Thank you, Ian. And yes, so when we talk about hybridizing plans and ideas, this is exactly what we're talking about. We're not expecting to say we're picking green or we're picking blue when we're done. We're hearing lots of good things, especially things like carrying your food down to the shelter, and that's why the north end is good, and how people use it, and how they're not enough space. So, you know, likely both of those concepts could benefit from a lot of this feedback that we heard and how we use the park. So thank you for that. Who haven't we heard from yet? I think just this table here, yes.
I think everything we've talked about, or many different things have already been mentioned.
How about something fun that you or about each other?
I personally really like the nature play idea because I think that it sort of gives a playground for kids who are a little bit older. Whereas now the playground is obviously geared for young children and it's great. But it needs to have a place for the 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds.
Mike.
So one idea that came up to me was that when I go to the park in the mornings, nobody's playing basketball. It's very underused. And one of the things that maybe you could do is what is needed around the city is more pickleball space. So if you do some lines. I've played at my friends. Just put its own little nets pretty quick and you can expand, you get adults using the courts and mornings when it's cool.
Pickleball is super loud. That sound, that wacky sound is just because right. And through my ears, I'm a musician, so maybe it was right through my ears.
And what I had heard is some of the science, I guess the sound that the pickleball makes when it hits the paddle or the ground is the same, was it pitch or tenor? I think Philip was sharing this with us, as a backup signal on a vehicle, which is meant to annoy people to say, hey, there's something. Wait a minute, the track. That's probably, but
Before though, maybe that would be.
You know, I read an article about a Massachusetts neighborhood where they said that percussive sound of the pickleball, I mean, they could hear it like a block away. Everyone hated it.
Yeah, 20 years houses.
Yeah. and something else.
yes, back here.
On that, our table discussed, in the green concept, the synergy between the playground and the basketball court, thinking about, I have a 6.5-year-old, about to have another kiddo. And a scooter on the basketball court in the mornings and like how kids use that space in the morning time. And it's right close to the playground. So having the basketball court and also the 1-year-olds. Age area kids use in the morning time, get that when basketball is not used, having it close to the playground was a thing that we need.
Thank you. We put off, I don't think we would have thought of it.
Yeah. We've never had an issue with the basketball player or ball. Because the kids love watching them play, so
It's just social to have them together because it's slightly different age groups and it's just really nice in the playground to look over and see the basketball players and I think it's a really
Kind
nice
of keeps them respectful.
interplay.
For a neighborhood park, there are actually quite a lot of amenities in this park. It is a bigger neighborhood park, but most neighborhood parks do not have a restroom. Do not have a full court basketball, they have a half court basketball.
Yeah.
A playing field, granted, it's a very small field. So there's a lot to balance in this park. And it's difficult. And what we did here, a lot of people enjoy the open space, so we're trying to protect that too. Yeah, in the back.
Yeah, if you're proposal, you were discussing restroom, but I was wondering what that is.
Thank you. I did forget to talk about that. So we have mixed survey results on survey 1 on the restroom. We've actually just completed a restroom analysis, of all our restrooms in the system. It's actually one of the best ones. The biggest thing that it's missing is a heated area where all the pipes are, so that we can keep it open during the. That's one on the list, and the other is potentially some doors on the stalls for this park. So those are the two things. So regardless of the concept, that's something we're talking about. Thank you. Well, we made it on time, barely, even though we started late. Thank you, everybody.
What should they do with that?
These papers, oh, yes, the papers.
Yeah.
We do want these. If you would like to put your name on them, that's great. You do not have to. But this is our record of some of the stuff. You've heard today. The survey is still open. Please encourage young people to take the survey.
Yeah, people don't know how to get to it, so they're big about it. Have to tell people how to get out of this.
One more for those, do you have any found the survey? One more, thank you. It's just mentioned, some people are having difficulty finding the survey, so there's both the email that I sent it out to interested parties, and there's a hot link in there. Take the survey, click on it, takes you there, or you go to the website and you scroll down. Survey 2 is the other one you can take right now. You click on it, and you take the survey. And it's online. Yeah, and if somebody's really having a hard time, I can get you a hard copy. Thank you, everybody. Means a lot. Thank you. Oh, wow.
The smaller backyard is totally like. You know, I've never, I don't know how much.
I know, I noticed, I know. Like there.
Almost got the fan back.
Yeah. The line, she's bringing it off in the middle of the night. Every morning.
Farmers makes actually has something paying fresh stuff from. It also has a little bit of place. So either way. it relies on it. Yeah. it's like saying-